Om. 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 Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Shri Saraswatyai Namaha, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं। सुखं नित्यं स्वप्रकाशं व्यापकं नामरूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्ध्यबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृग्यत्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं न मत्तोऽन्यत इति मे निश्चिता मतिः। So, today we are going to go through the entire chapter and see the recap and some important topics that were covered and discussed. There were 3 students who approached Guru and they asked question about oneness of Jiva and Brahman. And after they asked the question, Guru started answering. So Guru starts explaining the knowledge of oneness between Jiva and Brahman, by which liberation in form of gaining unsurpassed happiness devoid of any sorrow is gained. So before that, here around, there was the explanation of 7 states of ajnana to unsurpassed happiness, that is gaining of unsurpassed happiness, that is ananda, nirankusha, trupti. So answer was given. Your desire for liberation itself is on account of ignorance, because you are what you seek. Therefore, do not dwell upon the samsara, which is unreal. We should avoid thinking more about this samsara. Why? Because this samsara is unreal, and thinking any much or inquiring into this samsara is not going to yield any result. Rather than inquiring what is the nature of avidya, once we have understood what avidya is, it is appropriate to strive to negate that avidya. So the question was raised, if I was of the nature of happiness, then I would not have experienced happiness while experiencing sense objects. Thus, happiness is experienced from sense objects. The answer is given, if sense objects were of the nature of happiness, then the one would have experienced happiness from them equally and all the time. But in reality, happiness is experienced while experiencing sense objects is the reflection of Swarupananda. And this is a common misunderstanding and our idea that sense objects or Vishaya gives me happiness. But the reality is much different. In reality, the happiness is not gained from Vishaya, but while experiencing Vishaya, the Swarupananda gets reflected and the reflected happiness is experienced. This is the basic concept. And why? Keep in mind simple example. A 10 rupee note has value 10 rupees for everyone. Anyone carrying 10 rupee note can purchase an object which has the price tag 10 rupees or less. Why? Because for everyone, the piece of paper has the same amount of value. But because that is the value of that piece of paper, that piece of paper has that value, 10 rupees. But such is not the case with objects. If objects had happiness, then same amount of happiness would have been experienced by everyone. But that is not so. That's not how we see in this world. Therefore, happiness isn't the innate nature of sense objects, but the reflection of our Ananda Swarupa Atma in steady mind is experienced as happiness coming from sense objects. So while we are experiencing sense objects, what happens is our mind becomes as though steady during that experience. And when it becomes steady, the reflection of Ananda Swarupa Atma is being experienced. The reflection is more prominent, easily available. And that experience of the reflection appears to be the happiness coming from the object itself. When mind gets agitated again and again after desire for other sense object crops up in our mind, the experience of happiness ceases to be. While we are experiencing an object, when another desire crops up in our mind gets agitated, and once mind gets agitated, the reflection is disturbed and the experience of happiness stops. Jnani is either deeply merged in its swarupa or is aware of its surrounding, but never both at the same time. You cannot say Jnani is aware of its surrounding and at the same time he is merged into its swarupa. That is against the Siddhanta. When he is aware of the world around, he also will experience reflected happiness while experiencing sense objects, just like a Jnani. So you cannot say that while when Jnani is experiencing any sense objects or Vishaya, he is experiencing Swarupananda. No. The happiness that he is experiencing is reflected happiness alone. But unlike Ajnani, he is always aware that happiness experienced while experiencing sense objects is an experience, is an appearance, and it can never excel his Swarupananda. This is a very important point. Understand? Ajnani thinks that happiness coming from Vishaya is coming from Vishaya, but Jnani knows that it is reflection and not real. Further, just 1 second. Now we come to Adhyasa. The perception of snake, etc., which is the product of inexplicable ignorance, anirvachaniya avidya, is termed as anirvachaniya khyati. There were different explanations how ignorance or how snake is seen. We had seen those, but let's stick to anirvachaniya khyati. We are not going to see all the different explanations. Why anirvachaniya? Because it is inexplicable. That's what is the name. Neither can you say that ignorance is asat or that snake is asat or sat. Why can we say why can't we say it is asat, it is non-existent? Because it is being experienced and the effect is being perceived. At the same time, we can never say that it is existent because it goes away after rope is known. The set nature of Atma is in general, is in in its general form, untouched, eternal is its specific form. So Samanya Jnana and Vishesha Jnana, this topic had come. So Atma, Sattaya, as Sat principle, existent principle is available everywhere, is present everywhere. But the Asangatva is not present everywhere. Asangatva is its innate nature. For example, let's say this pain exists. So the existence is present with this object. But to say it is this object is asanga, not possible. So asangatva is that vishesha, that specific quality, its specific guna. If anything insentient is taken as locus of an unreal object, the question was raised, what is the locus where the avidya resides? That locus cannot be any insentient thing. It has to be sentient. If anything insentient is taken as locus of an unreal object, and that is adhyastha, the seer of that object becomes different from its locus. Whenever, can you see this pen? Okay. You may have to see this in my video. I don't know if you can see. Is it okay? So if you can see this pen, then you are different from this pen. But in case of Atma, Atma being sentient, Atma alone is the seer of this entire creation, at the same time is also substratum of this entire creation. For insentient object, it is not possible. Why? Insentient object can never become seer. The creation is caused by ignorance of one's own true nature. Therefore, knowledge of one's true nature alone is the solution, and this is an important rule. Avidya, ignorance, but which ignorance? We are not talking about ignorance of physics, maths, or vicarious knowledges, but we are talking about ignorance of our own true nature, because of which we are going around in this entire world. And to remove this ignorance, the knowledge should be the exactly opposite of that ignorance. The entire creation cannot exist in all three periods of time in Ni Brahman. This is the rule. The creation is not impossible in Brahman. Why? Brahman is untouched, all pervading. If it is all pervading, all pervasive, everywhere, then how can there be another object which is simultaneously present? Not possible. A simple example. A pot filled up to brim with water. So water is completely pervading the space inside that pot. Without spilling even a single drop of water, can you put rice inside that pot? Not possible. So two things cannot be simultaneously all pervasive, or one thing. It is not possible for one thing to be all pervasive, all pervading, and another thing to be simultaneously present. But if another thing appears to be, another thing is experienced to be there, then we have to understand that experience is just an appearance, like rope being seen on, snake being seen on rope. The superimposed entity can never pollute or affect its locus, and thus the creation has no effect on me, Brahman. As explained earlier, only if it is an appearance, we can experience two things being simultaneously present, while one of them is all pervading and another one is also experience. Another one will be apparent, superimposed. Now, what is knowledge? The firm conviction of this nature alone is called knowledge. This knowledge should be my own. Should be my own sakshatkar, that I am Brahman, untouched, avikari, asanga, etc. The Brahman which forms the substratum of this entire creation. Then how this entire creation comes into being, that was explained, and it was said Ajnana is the material cause of its effect, the entire creation. The creation comes about from Ajnana. The effect is completely destroyed only when its material cause is destroyed. I think the destruction in form of dissolution and destruction in form of total destruction. Two ways we have to understand. I will give you a simple example by which this concept will be clear. When we go to sleep, do we experience this entire creation? No. We do not. We say that entire creation is existing. Why? Because others say so, but it is not our own experience. So when we go to sleep, in a way, the creation undergoes dissolution, but the destruction in form of dissolution. The samsara that we are experiencing has undergone destruction in form of dissolution. It has undergone laya. It is no more there when we go into deep sleep. But when we wake up, it comes back. And it comes back exactly the way it went into dissolution. In Chandogya Upanishad, there is very beautiful example. They have said, tiger, lion, mosquitoes, all beings, when they go to sleep, they merge back into their own Swarupa. The entire creation for them is destroyed. But because of ignorance, on account of ignorance, when they come back as they went into dissolution, as they slept. So when tiger wakes up, he wakes up as tiger. When lion wakes up, he wakes up as lion. When mosquito wakes up as a mosquito. Imagine the chaos if tiger would have woken up as a mosquito or snake. It may sound funny, but that does not happen. That never occurs. But that does not happen. That never occurs. Then a question was raised. Can you please tell me all these terms that you use? Kutastha, Jiva, Ishvara, Brahman. How should I understand them? So, example was given: Ghatakasha, Jalakasha, Meghakasha, Mahakasha. Pot space, pot water space, cloud space, total space. Simple. Ghatakasha, a space contained within the pot. Then Jalakasha, fill that water with pot, and in that water which is contained within the pot, the space with stars is reflected. So there is reflected space in that pot. At the same time, the pot space is there. The pot space has not gone anywhere. It has just given the basis or substratum for the water within. Meghakasha. Water is there in clouds. In those cloud droplets, space is being reflected, and that those clouds, they are existing in total space. And there is total space which is everywhere. How do we correspond these? Total space is like Brahman, which is present everywhere all the time. The cloud space or cloud is like Ishvara, because it is Vyashti, assemblage, everything put together. For pot water space, that is Jiva, with the conditioning. Water acts as conditioning, and the space contained within the pot with respect to pot, even though that space contained within the pot is nothing but space, because it is being pointed out with reference to pot, and the another name in Vedanta is given Kutastha. Kutastha is nothing but Chaitanya Brahman alone, but because it is available in Upadhi, a different name has been given to point it out. So that is Jiva, Brahman, Kutastha, Ishvara. Now understand. Jiva and Kutastha, how they were defined. Kutastha and Jiva, how were they defined? So Jiva was conditioning as quality or upadhi, that having quality, antahkarana vritti as quality, and for Sakshi it was conditioning. And when we say quality, it becomes its part, and when we say upadhi or conditioning, without becoming part of it, it affects the object. Asangataya, even though they are not touched, they don't come in contact, they don't affect each other, they superimpose properties of each other on each other. Simple example, red colored cloth. You cannot separate the red color of that cloth from cloth itself. So the red color is the quality of that cloth. But imagine you put a clear crystal or glass sphere on that red colored cloth. Now that glass crystal is appearing red color. Has the actual transfer of properties occurred when that red color is appearing on that in that glass? No, it is just an appearance. So here the red color is acting as an conditioning and not a quality. In the same way, that antahkarana acts as upadhi for Sakshi, but for Jiva it is its quality. That's what Jiva is by definition. Now let's see definition. Who is Ishvara? The consciousness reflected in Maya Upadhi, and consciousness that forms the substratum together is called Ishvara. Who is Ishvara? Ishvara is Chaitanya and its reflection in Maya Upadhi together. Not just reflection, not just bimba, not just the original, but original and reflection both together alone can be Ishvara. Now, when we say reflection and original, understand one thing, they are not two separate different things. It is just the appearance, it is the concept. It is the way of explaining, not concept, it is the way of explaining. Why so? Let me give you an example. Now there is a red colored glass in which I have poured water inside. Now, the water is colorless at the same time red colored. What is the reality? The red color, it is appearing red colored and yet you know it is colorless. So can I say there are two types of water present in that glass? One is colorless and one is colored? No. The red colored water is in reality colorless. That's how the Ishvara is. The reflection is present only on account of upadhi. And because at the transactional plane, we have taken up, we have understood or taken upadhi to be present, we have to take reflection also. So bondage, therefore, bondage and liberation are seen in reflected consciousness and not in consciousness that forms the substratum. Bandha and moksha, both are for upadhi and not for upahita. Chaitanya is Chaitanya alone. It can never be bound, it can never get liberated. Ishwar, now Jiva does have veiling caused by ignorance and therefore he is bound and gets liberated. But for Ishvara, he is never bound. Why? Because of Shuddha Sattva. He is never, he was never, he can never be under the influence of Maya or Avidya, ignorance. Brahman is like total space, present everywhere, asanga, untouched all the time. The existence of one and the same Chaitanya in four different manners in this way was explained. This was just the point of reference which we are using. In reality, you cannot separate Chaitanya into these four different types. The only thing is from what point of reference you are looking at that Chaitanya will determine what name should be given and what it should, how it should be understood. And conversely, whatever that you are experiencing, understand it is Chaitanya alone being seen from different perspective. So when you are seeing, when you are experiencing yourself as Jiva, at the same time you have to understand you are not Jiva but Chaitanya. A question was raised at that time. No, oneness is not possible. Why? Dvasuparana. The Shruti. There are two birds. One is experiencing and one is the non-experiencer. Because they have said two, it is Dvaita. Two are separate. So Shruti, Dvasuparana should be understood. It was said, no, understand it in this way. Two birds are Chidabhasa and Kutastha and not Jiva and Ishvara. Whereas Chidabhasa is experiencer and Kutastha is the illuminator of all experiences. It is Avabhasaka. It illumines everything, in presence of which all experiences are possible. If those two are taken as Jiva and Ishvara, then the problem is Abhasa part of Jiva Chaitanya becomes an experiencer, whereas Abhasa part of Ishvara Chaitanya becomes giver of karma phala. But one pure consciousness principle present in both remains untouched and same all the time. Now, this apparent difference is on account of or at the level of Abhasa alone, and it is not real. What are you talking about? I don't understand. For which the explanation was given. Samanadhikaranya, whereas Mukhya Samanadhikaranya and Badha Samanadhikaranya. Before which a short topic was taken up about Asatva Padaka Avarana and Abhana Padaka Avarana. Simple. A Sattva, a negation, Sattva existence, Bhana experience. Because of ignorance, two things are happening. One is we do not experience avarana. One effect of avidya is avarana, veiling. That veiling is of two types. One veiling is over the existence of an object, and another veils the knowledge of that object, saying that Brahman is not there, so it does not exist. Such is asatva padaka avarana. And Brahman does exist, but it cannot be known, or it is not known, is abhana padaka avarana. Simple. There is very beautiful example in Panchadashi. A father goes to his son's recital, and the son is singing a song along with many different students. Now, when father is far away, he does not know if his son is singing or not. So for him, neither does he know if his son is singing, nor he can experience his son's singing. Why? Because everybody is singing together. But when he enters into that room and he sees his son present in that crowd, with all those children who are singing, when father sees his son with all the children who are singing and sees his son's mouth moving, he knows that his son is singing. Yet, because of all the other sounds which are present, he does not know, or he cannot hear his son's sound separate from all the other sounds. If all other sounds are stopped, and if only his son sings, he will be able to listen to his son's singing. So, not knowing if his son is singing or not is asatva padaka avarana. And even though he knows that his son is singing, not being able to listen to his son's sound or voice is abhana padaka avarana. Same is it with the Brahman. Brahman does not exist. Brahman वगैरह कुछ नहीं होता है. असत्वा पादका वर्ण. Yes, Brahman does exist, but how can you know it? It is impossible. It is not known. Or I don't know Brahman is abhana padaka avarana. Later we came to the topic of samanadhikaranya, understanding the statement of oneness. How should we understand all these upadhi, chaitanya, etc.? Simple. There is something called as Mukhya Samanadhikaranya and there is something called as Badha Samanadhikaranya. There is Mukhya Samanadhikaranya, the condition of relating to the same object or residing in the same subject in direct sense, which is between Kutastha and Brahman. So pot, space and total space are one and the same. Yes, you don't have to negate anything. Directly you can say the both spaces are same. To say both spaces is again fallacious, but for the sake of explanation, we have to say it that. For Badha Samanadhikaranya, the conditioning of relating to the same object or residing in the same object in residing in the same subject in implied sense, that is between Chidabhasa and Brahman. Yes, Chidabhasa is Brahman. Yes, reflected space and total space are one and the same. How? You have to take away the reflection part. Another example which was given in the book was misapprehension of lamppost as a man. Just as a lamppost misapprehended to be a man is not different from its true nature. Only when the illusory nature of man is dropped. Similarly, only when Abhasa nature of Chidabhasa is dropped, it is not different from Brahman. So you have to drop something. You have to do Badha, negation of something, then alone that oneness can be proven or indicated. You saw a man on a lamppost. Now, is that man different from lamppost? No. How? Because there is nothing called as man. Man was just an appearance. Take away that appearance, in reality, lamppost is lamppost. Take away man, appearance of man, what is left behind? Lamppost. And what are we correlating that or equating that with? Lamppost. No difference at all. After going through all this explanation, we came to the process of knowledge. How do we know objects? And for which the explanation was given. The thoughts as though go out through sense organs. They get modified to become the exact replica of an object outside. And this thought modification is termed as vritti in Vedanta. Now this vritti cannot be born in absence of Chaitanya. Wherever vritti is, Chaitanya is. Or wherever Chaitanya is, vritti is. Thus, vritti that is born is always along with the reflection of Chaitanya, that is Chidabhasa. So, wherever vritti is present, the reflection will of Chaitanya will be there in that vritti. That reflection is referred to as Chidabhasa. And the original is Chaitanya. Another point that came along with this, the locus and object of avidya is undifferentiated pure consciousness alone, because later arrived jiva cannot be the locus and object of prior existing ignorance. So what is the avidya vishaya and what is the adhara of avidya? What forms the locus? It is Chaitanya. And what is the Vishaya? Chaitanya only. You cannot say avidya has its locus in jiva. There are few who accept that avidya is in jiva. Why? Because it belongs to jiva. But the thing is, jiva is the product of avidya. And if jiva is product of avidya, so jiva has come after ignorance. Then how can jiva who has come after ignorance be substratum for ignorance? Not possible. I am standing on ground. Which ground? The ground that was laid down or created by me. Or it is not possible, because something has to be there before jiva, which would have given support to ignorance. Therefore, it is appropriate to say that avidya has its locus as in Chaitanya, and the object of that avidya, where to whom does that affect? Chaitanya only. Even though it affects a jiva, it in reality the effect is seen in Chaitanya. Why? Because there is nothing called as jiva. Jiva is the effect of avidya. Then again the topic came back to modes of knowledge, and we had seen 6 different means of knowledge. Pratyaksha, direct perception; anumana, inference; shabda, verbal testimony; upamana, comparison; arthapatti, presumption; anupalabdhi, non-apprehension. And these 6 means have been accepted by Vedanta. And based on these 6 means, different knowledges have been accepted. So 6 different knowledges. So pratyaksha jnana, anumiti jnana, shabda jnana, etc. Here again a discussion came up. Should smriti be considered as knowledge or not? And the explanation was given. Smriti is not valid knowledge. We cannot consider recollection as valid knowledge. Why? Because it is not born of any pramana. Recollection is not valid knowledge because it has its locus in sakshi, whereas valid knowledge has its locus in thought modifications born out of means of knowledge. And what other thing has is its locus in sakshi? Just now we saw avidya. And because recollection has its locus in sakshi or chaitanya, it is just like ignorance. Recollection is not considered as valid knowledge due to its similarities with erroneous cognition, that is adhyasa, and doubt, both of which are product of ignorance, avidya. Vedanta has categorized valid knowledge into 6 different types based on 6 different means. Then, while on this topic, additional point was taken up: 4 ways of explaining Chaitanya. When we talk about knowledge, we have to understand there is knower, object that is being known, the process of knowing, and means of knowledge. And for all these, Chaitanya has to be there as its substratum or reflection. So Pramatru Chaitanya, Chaitanya predicated, separated out by thought modifications, by antahkarana vrittis in this body, is Pramatru Chaitanya. What is Pramana Chaitanya? Chaitanya present in thought modification, antahkarana vritti, that goes out to objects of knowledge. So that which acts as instrument. the vrittis which act as instrument, in those vrittis, the Chaitanya which is reflected, that particular Chaitanya. So everywhere we know what is Pramana, Pramana vritti, add Chaitanya. In this way, Pramatru Chaitanya, Pramana Chaitanya, Prameya Chaitanya, and Pramiti or Prama Chaitanya. Pramatru refers to knower, Pramana refers to means of knowledge or vritti which acts as means, Prameya the object of knowledge where vritti itself has become the replica of that object, and Pramiti, Prama, the knowledge itself. Chaitanya present in thought modification or Chaitanya that pervades the object of knowledge is Prameya Chaitanya, and Pramiti or Prama Chaitanya is where our vritti has become the replica of Prameya. While this explanation was being given up, another topic cropped up about Avachedavada and Abhasavada. Simple. Avachedavada and Abhasavada. How do we differentiate? Avachedavada does not consider the reflection. So from Avachedavada method of explanation, Jiva is defined as Chaitanya qualified by Antahkarana, whereas Sakshin is Chaitanya conditioned by Antahkarana. But from Abhasavada method of explanation, Jiva is defined as Chaitanya qualified by Antahkarana endowed with Chidabhasa. Just add endowed with Chidabhasa. Whereas Sakshin is Chaitanya conditioned by Antahkarana endowed with Chidabhasa. Why do we have to add this endowed with Chidabhasa? Because it is there. You cannot escape. And by adding that, many minute details can be explained. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, but Abhasavada method of explanation is advantageous. As per Abhasavada method of explanation, when Jiva is defined as Chaitanya qualified by Antahkarana endowed with Chidabhasa, the problem is avoided. Which problem? By Avachedavada method of explanation is Jiva is defined as Chaitanya which is qualified by Antahkarana vritti, then that definition can be applied to all other places where Chaitanya is experienced having quality. Chaitanya qualified by inner pot. That also will become Jiva. And this has also been taken up in Panchadashi. Chidabhasa is that will determine the Jivatva. Presence of Chidabhasa will determine Jivatva. Otherwise, they may be sentient, but they are not, we may call them as sentient, but they are not Jiva. So, just an Antahkarana is endowed with reflection of Chaitanya, the vrittis born of that Antahkarana are also endowed with reflection of Chaitanya as well. Thus, Prama, Pramana, Pramatru and Prameya vritti is also endowed with Chaitanya, and they are also known as Prama Chaitanya, Pramana Chaitanya, Pramatru Chaitanya and Prameya Chaitanya. Why this all distinction? To explain that Brahma Jnana is possible. Question was raised. Brahman does not become an object of knowledge for sense objects, for sense organs, because sense organs are extroverted and Brahman is innermost. Organs of action are incapable of gaining any knowledge, and as it is not their function. So, Brahman can never become Pratyaksha. You may talk about Vritti, but by Shabda Pramana, knowledge which is gained is Paroksha and not Aparoksha. but for which the answer was given, it is not so. Shabda Pramana, verbal testimony, also acts as direct knowledge, and by Shabda Pramana, by a statement, direct knowledge can take place, like you are that 10th man. A sentence has been uttered. It is in Pramana is verbal testimony. But that person directly knows that he is that 10th man. In the same way, when it is said, you are that Brahman, the student will understand that he is Brahman, provided he is a competent student. Thus, Brahman is directly known by a competent student when he listens to Mahavakya from a competent teacher. Going back little bit, Mahavakya is the statement which gives us the oneness, knowledge of oneness, and other statements which talk about the existence of Brahman are Avantara Vakya. For example, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is Sat, Sat principle, that is existence principle, knowledge principle, happiness principle. This gives me knowledge that Brahman is existing. Brahman is. But Tattvamasi, that Brahman you are, gives me what Brahman is, makes me know what Brahman is. So, Avantara Vakya, statements which talk about the existence of Brahman are going to remove Asatva Padaka Avarana, the veiling over the existence of Brahman, and Mahavakya is going to remove veiling over ignorance of Brahman. So, the knowledge part is going to be revealed to me. Thus is the recap of the entire 4th chapter. So from next class, we will start with the 5th chapter. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om